Okay, this is a video request that somebody asked me to make. I believe what you would call like a scarfette. It's just a really small thing to go around your neck. I've never actually really made one, but I figured the process is probably very similar to making a regular scarf, and then you would obviously make it shorter, and you would add like a button or something to it and a buttonhole. So I'm kind of going off that idea to make this. So you'll probably maybe need a crochet hook when you want to take the project off. So just set that someplace so you won't lose it like I usually do. Grab yourself some scissors in case you need them. A normal hook. I'm going to use the blue loom just because I think it shows up in the camera view enough to be able to see what I'm doing. And we got some buttons too. These are just cheap ones I got at my local Walmart. It was 78 cents for both of them. They're fairly simple. There's nothing high tech about them. But they might be a little too big than what you want to use. It's just this what I had on hand. I haven't gone through all my buttons to see exactly what I have. But these also have, I haven't taken them off yet, but they have a really big loop. I can see a really big loop to kind of, I think, work yarn through, if you can see that. And that's why I think it'll make it easier to sew it onto the scarfette where you want it. Plus, if you have two, you could almost put two buttons, and then that way you could adjust it as you need it to how tight you want it around your neck. So that's what I was thinking about these buttons. And this way, what we're going to do for the, we're going to sew this, we'll sew this on with this yarn, just tie it onto the scarfette. And to make the buttonhole, all we're going to do is do like a mini, I think, little I-cord that we can tie on it, and this will fit through. That way we try to keep it as simple as that way we have the main part's going to be the scarf, and then one little extra part to add to it, I think, would be the easiest, versus doing a buttonhole right into the project. But anyhow, to get started, so like I said, just find yourself some buttons. Like I said, these might be a little too big. Just find yourself some kind of button that you want to use. I just figured I'd grab those because I looked they might work. And like I said, I got my blue loom. And when it comes to term of yarn for this, I would definitely recommend getting something that's going to be obviously soft against your skin. You're talking about having this around your neck. You don't want a yarn that's scratchy. So find a yarn that you have a preference for that's soft. You know, something that, and warm, obviously, if you're going to use it in the winter. But for the sake of the tutorial, I'm just using some leftover yarn I had. So I'm hoping there's enough. I have a white and I have a baby blue. I don't know if there'll be enough to make what I'm doing. But I'm just going to use two strands together. And I don't know if this would really feel good against it, because it's kind of like an older yarn that I kind of got from a garage sale, which makes great for tutorials, but I'm not sure if it's going to be useful. We'll see. So all I'm going to do is create my slip knot. This does not require the drawstring cast on. I know I've done a lot of videos involving that. So just make your slip knot. So you have your little hole, and then I'm going to put it right onto the peg, the starting peg. Now, what you can choose to do now is hide this tail as you're working, which I usually do. That way it keeps it right out of my way. And the color of this video is going to probably go back and forth because of holding up the blue loom, as you can see. But bear with me. So we're going to grab it, and then we have to figure out, I'm trying to figure out, okay, well, how wide do I want it? And again, this varies on your neck, so it's really hard to say, okay, use this many pegs, because I'm a plus-size girl. My neck might be different than someone else's neck, or smaller or bigger, so really what you're going to do is play around with it a little bit. Your best bet, figure out how many. I mean, I'm going to do probably about half the thing. I'm going to work just in between that part, I think, to make it skinny enough just to go around the tutorial. But again, you can adjust it very easily by adding more pegs if you need it to go. You want it to go around more. But we're just going to work about half the peg, I think. So this is, I call this number 1. So maybe we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I do believe I did peek at a video that somebody had did of this, and they had used 15. And I just kind of fast forward to see the ending of it. I didn't really watch how she did it because I wanted to figure it out myself. I just watched a little, like a snippet to kind of see what she did, fast forwarding it. But I think, you know, we're going to try to keep it simple. That's usually the goal of my videos, is simple. So she, I believe, I did 15. Let's say, but again, I don't know. I may do a little more. I mean, I may decide I want to do 20 or something and have it be a little wider to go around my neck and cover a little more of my neck and upper chest area. So 15 is what would actually get us about halfway around this loom. So that's really up to you. So you can decide more or less depending on your neck size. But I think we'll just kind of stick with the 15 for right now. Like I said, this is a practice one, so you can see how it goes. And I'm just going to simply do the E-wrap caps on for the first row, just to get it on the loom. And it's the easiest one for people to follow. So we're going to go around until we hit 15. So count them as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. That's 15. And as you get working and it comes down, you can look at it and be like, I want it bigger or wider. But we're going to stick with the 15 just to see how that goes for us. And we're going to push them down. Now this is where the fun part is of where you choose what stitches you want. Okay, but what we're going to do is I'm going to kind of want these to be secure. So I'm only going to do an E-wrap back. So I'm going to work myself, back to the front first. I'm just doing this. I mean, you can change the stitch up. I'm just working it back in a simple E-wrap method until I get back to the beginning. And then I'll start playing around with what stitches I want to do. So I'm just E-wrapping it back to the beginning. And then I'm going to knit over. And then we'll play around with what stitches we want to do. And again, it's clearly up to you. You can do, I believe, a chunky braid stitch, all that. But the one thing I would suggest, if possible, would be on the ends to alternate between knitting and purling. It usually helps make it a little flatter and less curling on a normal flat panel project. So I would suggest that since we're knitting over right now, that when we go back through, on the two end ones at least, that maybe we do a purl this time around, just to kind of, like I said, keep the ends hopefully from not curling as much. You can block the project. I've never done that. Not really quite sure what it's all about. I just tend to go with the flow, but you can probably do that. But what we're going to do, for the sake of this, is we're going to come back around and we're going to purl these two. These are the first two stitches, and then we're going to go over here. When we get to the end, we'll purl these two stitches. Well, actually, no. On this one, we're only going to purl the one. We're only going to purl this one because we're bringing this over. So this time around, we'll purl on this one, and then we'll do whatever stitch you want until you get over here. And then these last two, we're going to purl those again. So I'm going to purl these, which is simply taking the hook. Let's see, let me get over here. And I'm going to turn it. A little trickier to do, so it makes a loop. See how it's kind of created a loop? And then we're going to take that loop, make it a little bigger for you so you can see. And we're going to pull that right off the loom and put that new loop on top of it. And that's how you purl. So we did that one purling. Now, how do you want to do the stitches that are in between where we're going to work on knitting and purling? Because like I said, once we get over here, we're going to do some, once we get to these two, we're going to purl those just to kind of help with, hopefully, the rolling. So I think what we could do in the middle is you want to kind of make it interesting. So I would you could either do it all purl across, which will kind of give it a versatile fabric where you can do a knit a row, purl a row, knit a row, purl a row. That might actually be kind of fun to do and keep it very simple. So I think for with this video, what we're going to try doing is just simply that. We're going to purl a row and then knit a row for a little bit. And then maybe midway through the project, you can change out your stitch a little bit because this purling would help. So I think what we'll do is we'll go ahead, and we will purl all the way to the number 15. We'll do the same thing so that you can create that loop, and take it off and put it on there. And we're going to do this, like I said, all the way over to 15. Move this down a little so you can see. I'm just taking it through there, and then I'm just turning it so that it comes through, creates my loop, take that off, and place it back on. So we're going to just do a purl row. And like I said, play around with these stitches as much as you want. I'm just trying to keep it simple, and this will create kind of a reversible fabric if we go back and forth from knitting a row to purling a row. And that will automatically should help our edges from not curling as much. And then all you have to do is go as long as you need the project to be. And then we'll take it off the loom, we'll add our buttonhole, we'll sew on the button, and we should have our cute little scarfette done. And then the next one you can be a little more adventurous and play around with the stitches a little more and the idea of them. And it should come out pretty cute. So all I'm doing, like I said, is just purling. Alright, using two strands kind of helps to be a little thicker. You may just, because this yarn is a little thinner, but if you're using a thicker yarn, you may be able to get away with just one. So, like I said, I would knit a row, purl a row for a little bit, just on the ends. Especially if you say you did 5 rows on this side doing that, when you get to the end, if you want to be consistent, then you may want to do that at the end, do the same back and forth like you just did. So, okay, we did our last purling right here. Okay, so that was a purl row. Now let's go ahead and do a knit row on the way back. I'm just doing it as a simple E-wrap. There is a different way to knit. So I'm going to show you the other way to knit. Excuse me. Usually with the E-wrap, I just wrap it, as you saw me do it in the beginning. but there is what's called a different way of knitting. Now, as we went through and wanted to purl, we were putting the strand, I'm just going to do like this, we were putting the strand below what we had. But to knit it, you're going to want it on top. And then you're going to go underneath and come up, oops, if I can do it right with two strands, up to create your loop. Make sure I got it right. And then again, you're just going to take that off and put it on there. And that's a different way to knit. You're going to go up, turn. So I call it like reverse purling. So if you know how to purl, just reverse that idea for the knit. Now I turn this around so I can see what I'm doing better. Okay, so you're just going to do like reverse purling, so you're going to have it on top of the project and work up a little different. And this is a little different than doing the E-wrap. Oh my goodness. Alright. And that's what I would say, just kind of go back and forth and do that, because it creates a reversible fabric. Easier if you do a knit row, purl row, and you can knit this way and then purl the normal way. I just did the E-wrap in the beginning because that's the easiest. This is easy too, but I mean that's just a good way to start. I usually like to, my foundation is usually an E-wrap method for a lot of things. You can try to start your project doing it this way if you want for the knitting. Okay, we're almost back to the beginning. Like I said, I'm just doing the reversing of purling to do my knit, or you could choose to do purl all the way across. It's whatever kind of what you want to do. Keep it simple if you haven't been loom knitting a while. I've been loom knitting since the beginning of this year, so I still kind of do things simple. I slowly am learning a little more advanced stuff, and again, as I learn, I usually try to share it. So when people start asking me how to do certain things that are a little more advanced, it takes me a little time. So I'm just working my way back. I've got a few more stitches in the knit here. Okay. Another cute idea for a scarlet is if you've ever done the I-cord stitch, I'm not sure how many people know how to do that. It's a really simple stitch using just basically 3 pegs on your loom, but the idea of it, you could probably expand to more than 1 peg. Oops. Now watch my work because I just lost my, there we go. Okay, and the last one to knit over. Alright. Now we can go back through. Now I'm going to keep it simple. Can you see on the inside how it's kind of looking? It won't be down for quite a while. I mean, we're just starting to get it kind of just grazing that. But now this might be thicker than which we want. I don't know, but I mean, we'll see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work on it a little bit, and since I've already done the knit row, I'm just going to work back and forth doing a row of purling now, then a row of knit back, then a row of purling, then a row of knit back. I'm going to keep it simple for the first scarlet, just because, you can advance it as you go along with other stitches that you know. The idea is if this is your first time making it, keep it simple on yourself. And this is my first time making it, so you're actually seeing the first scarfette that I've ever done. So we'll see how this comes out at the end. So I'm going to work my way back and forth until I get this a little longer. Like I said, I'm looking at it going, that might not be as wide as I want it. Like I said, I just only briefly looked at a person's video. I really hate looking at videos because I want to learn myself, but somebody says, hey, can you do that? And I honestly have no idea what they're talking about. I have to look it up sometimes just to get the visual idea in my head, and then I kind of think of how I want to do it. So that's what we're going to do. Is I'm going to go off camera, and I'm just going to work back and forth until I get it the length that I want, and then I'll come back and show you about taking it off the loom and adding the button and adding the buttonhole. So keep up with it. Hopefully you're working on yours at the same time, and then just advance it each time you go. When we get done with this, we'll talk about what other things you could do. I just wanted to share. I'm still working on it, and I want to show how it's kind of reversible, as you can see. Doing a knit row and then a purl row, this is what it looks like. If you actually look on the inside of it, it kind of looks the same. So really it's up to you what you want to do. I'm going to keep working on this, on this knit purl thing, but I just wanted to show you that, I'm probably working on maybe 20 minutes. I've been distracted by watching Edward Scissorhands. I remember watching it when I was younger, and I happened to be on TV, well, on my Netflix, so I decided to put that in, and while I'm watching the movie, loom knit, because that's what's one of the greatest things about it. It's easy to kind of keep doing this while you're doing something else. But really, I'm not sure how long I'm going to have to make this to go around my neck. Probably I'm only going to be able to go as long as the colors lets me too. So if I run out of color, it might be a little shorter. But excuse me, I'm just going to keep going with knitting a row and purling a row. I like the look of it, especially with the two different colors and the fact that it's kind of reversible. These little straggle strands that you see, I'm going to cut off later and stuff. They're not going to hurt the project at all. That's just from where we picked up the tail and we wove it in. So really, it's if you don't like that look of it, I mean, it's going to be a little different depending on what kind of yarn you use and the colors you use, obviously. A different weight yarn might give it a different look. Like I said, I'm using 2 strands, so it's going to look a little different. So really, there's a lot of factors you have to think of when you're making a project, which makes it sometimes more complicated than it has to be. But really, when you think of a project, a lot of things I think of is the yarn, width of the yarn, like the thickness of it, the color, the texture, all that. I mean, there's so many things that come into play when you loom knit. And then in knit in general, I mean, you always are thinking of what yarns work better for what projects, like really soft yarns for baby blankets, but maybe you want something a little coarser for a different kind of project. Then there's projects like making a snowman. See, I still got my little snowman. That really doesn't matter what you use because it's more for decorative purposes. So here's my snowman. If you haven't checked out my video on how to make them, go right ahead because it's a really cute idea, and I'll be making a bunch of those for Christmas gifts this year. And so that's what it looks like so far, and I'm going to keep working on it. I'm probably going to get it to I'm going to need it to be at least over 12 inches long, so I'm going to keep working on it. I don't know if I'll get the rest of this video done tonight. Of course, you won't know that. But if you see me in a different color shirt, that means I had to finish doing the video the next night. So I'm going to work on this pretty much the rest of the night, and then when I'm ready to take it off, I'll make sure I do that on the video so you can see. I'm going to take it off like I usually take flat panels off, doing the crochet chains in between, and then we will figure out adding the button and the buttonhole. So just want to give you an update. So keep looming and get the product as long as you want. I'm not even sure how many inches you're supposed to have it for a scarfette, so really think of how long you do a normal scarf. And I think they usually want them to rest a little, probably if you do it, I would say like 12 inches to 24 inches probably is what you're going to be aiming for to have it go around your neck and do what they do. But I'm going to get back to doing on this so that I can come back and show you it being finished soon. Okay, really quick, we're on day 2 of working on this. I didn't work on it as long as I wanted to last night, and this is just doing the garter stitch, which is making it a knit a row, purl a row. It makes it kind of reversible. But what I'm doing now is I got a little bored with that, so I wanted to update my pattern. So I've got these stitch markers strategically placed every so often, and what I'm doing is a slip stitch during those. So I'm on my way working back through this row, which is my row that's going to be the knit row going back to the beginning. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do a slip stitch too. So wherever there is a stitch marker, which you see that yellow thing, is where I'm going to do a slip stitch. But for now, I have to do the regular knit, which I showed in the first part. I do that until I hit the peg that has the stitch marker, and then I'll show you really quick what I believe the slip stitch is. I haven't used this too much. What the slip stitch is you're going to just basically take this peg, this loop off gently. You don't need to take it all the way off. Just going to lift it up, and then you're going to take your yarn that you have, and you're just going to put it behind the peg. And then you're going to put that loop right back on. It's a little tricky to do backwards. It looks harder than it is, but when you're working out, you'll be facing it. And then that is simply how it works. You're just going to end up lifting up. Now you decide where you want it. I'm just trying out a new pattern. And then I'm going to do a regular knit for the next one because I don't have any stitch marker there. So again, when you want to do the slip stitch, it's good to have stitch markers for that reason, so that if you want to change it up. But I have a stitch marker here, so what I'm going to do again is I'm going to lift up that stitch, remove it gently off for a second, and put the 2 strands of yarn behind it. See, they're now behind the peg, and then put the loops back on. And that's how you do the slip stitch. So I'm kind of working that. I haven't been able to see exactly what that's going to look like because I haven't worked that far down. But that's all I'm doing now is because I wanted to change up my pattern a little bit. I was getting a little bored by it, and that's one thing I tend to design as I go along. So that's all I'm going to do now is I'm finishing up my knit row and doing that slip stitch wherever I see my stitch marker, and then that's what I'm doing. I'm getting back to here knitting, and then when I go back this way I'm purling, but I'm doing the slip stitch wherever I have my stitch marker. So that's what I'm working on, and I will get back to you when I get a little further done. Okay, I just wanted to share again really quick. I've been working on the neck warmers, scarf, whatever you want to call it. Still got a ways to go. But I want to show that I had switched off. I did the garter stitch, which is doing a knit row, then a purl row. And then I switched off into the slip stitch. I don't know if you can really see it that well. Let's see if I can get in the camera right. Okay, right in this part right here. Okay, right in here. You see that I did the slip stitch, which actually is not too bad. It's a little hard to tell because of the colors, but it just kind of gives it, if I hold it sideways you can kind of see it, that bump raised part is when I was doing the slip stitch. It kind of gives it a little more visual texture. But what I actually thought was kind of cool when I turned it over for the inside, it actually kind of created, you can see like a design kind of feel. Wait, let me see. I'm going to use this to point with. Right along here, you see that design kind of feel. And I actually thought that was kind of cool, so if you wanted to, you could drape it like this and have that little design of how it pulled them up. But this is how it looks again. Like I said, I'm not sure how much longer I go. I was going like this earlier, going, not long enough. But it's pretty flat, too. It's not really curling. It did start to curl when I did the slip stitch up here. It started to curl my project a little bit, so I switched back to doing the garter stitch so that I can still keep it kind of flat on its own, which would limit me having to block it if I don't want to. So I'm going to keep going. Basically, I'm going until the balls of yarn I have run out. I do believe I have an extra white ball if I get low on that, but I'm just going to be able to have to go as long as I can get with this yarn. I don't have any more of this blue that I can see, and but I do have more white. Yeah, I'm using a trick-or-treat pail to put the balls of yarn in. I don't always have the yarns like this, usually it's on a skein, but this keeps it from falling all over the place when it's beside me. But no, I just want to give a quick little update showing how far I've gone. It's been working on it, on and off since last night. And so we will keep going, and hopefully the next time you see me, we'll be ready to take... Okay, I'm still working on it, so you're seeing me probably in my third shirt. It's not that it's actually a project that takes that long. It's just that obviously life goes on, and with the holidays and stuff like that, I wasn't able to work on it. But I wanted to explain something before I forgot. I was talking about the slip stitch, which you can see in the back here. I did this design. The reason I did it like that is because what I did is as I was knitting this row, I would slip stitch wherever you saw one of my stitch markers. And then when I went back this way to do the purling, I slipped those again. So that's why it looks like this, because I slipped them more than once kind of thing before I went back into doing the regular garter stitch. So I would recommend, if you want a different pattern, is say you're working one way, you're going to slip whatever ones you decide you want to, but then when you work back, make sure you do your knitting or your purling, and that'll create a different effect. So I would say just do the slip stitches in one direction and do your knitting or whatever in the other, so that way it creates a pattern. Unless you like this little bit of a gap kind of thing that's going on here, then like I said, I did that because I slipped every time I went across those pegs. I slipped it, and then when I got back to doing the garter stitch up here, that's when it kind of attached itself, kind of thing. So I mean, it's still coming along. I haven't worked on it too much because of Thanksgiving, but I wanted to explain that to show you that, if you're going to use the slip stitch, your best way is, because you're working back and forth, is to slip the stitches one way and then go back doing like all the knitting or all the purling, so that it'll create the effect you want. So like I said, just slip stitch in one direction, and when you work your way back, probably the best thing to do is just do your knitting or purling. Like for me right now, whenever I work, because this is a little peg, the starting peg, so when I work from here to here, I'm doing the knit stitch, and when I'm working from back here, back to the beginning, I'm doing the purling. So again, whatever stitch you're going to do, if you do the slip, just make sure you're only doing it in one direction, and that you're just doing a normal stitch back, and that'll kind of create an effect too. But I'm going to keep working on this. I'm hoping to have it be able to be done and be able to show you how to take it off, and within the next day or so, if I get the chance to actually work on it as much as I want. I'm not sure exactly how long, and what I also did is, I know I showed you buttons, that were black. Well, I went and picked up some tan ones because I feel it'll go a little better with the lighter colors, so I decided to switch that out. These are at Walmart for 2 for 78 cents. I'm really looking forward to maybe getting to a local Joann's and stocking up on stuff. A little more variety. There wasn't much variety at Walmart, so when there's not a lot of variety, yeah, kind of do what you have to do. So this video is long, and I'm sorry if I keep coming back, but as I think of stuff, because this is actually the first time I'm making this, I want to make sure I put it on video, like I said, about the slip stitch or whatever, because I don't want to forget at the end. I'd rather have a video be too long than not long enough to be able to explain everything to you. So this is what we're working on. I'm not even sure how long it is, but it's not long enough to do what I want to do. And I'm getting down to, I can show you, this size for the white and this size for the blue. and I was only going to work as long as these are, so it may not even end up being as long as I need it to be, but the idea will be there, and you can change out your stuff. Now, people have asked, well, how are you going to do the buttonhole? Well, I'll talk about that for a minute right now. When I did the buttons that I got, if I can show you close enough, they have a big enough hole that I can put a thing of yarn through, I believe. So that will help me to tie it onto the project. To do the buttonhole, we're just going to do an I-cord stitch and attach it to it, which we'll do at the end. You could almost, because the stitches, if you got loose enough stitch, you may not need to do a buttonhole. You could almost just try to put the button through your stitch like that if you wanted to. But we will try to do that at the end. Still working on it, and I want to just explain again about the stitches I used. Got the garter at the beginning. My slightly messed up using of the slip stitch here, where you see it's a little more bumpy, and created the different background. Then I went back into doing garter stitch for a while. Now what I also did, I decided to do a little more of a traditional like slip stitch, just to show the difference. I'm hoping it will show up on camera. This in here is kind of where I did more of the regular probably way to slip stitch. You can kind of see it, how this is garter down here, and this is kind of slipping. And what I did here is I tried to remember, is I would slip like every other peg, and then when I would go back, I'd do the reverse of it. So, for example, if I started here, to make sure I'm holding it right, I may have slipped this one, purled or knit this one, and slip, knit, and do that all the way around. Then when I would go backwards, it would be the opposite to create a different effect. So that's what I really want to stress when you're doing different kind of patterns. Play around with the different stitches as you're going along. This is a sample, so I'm not too worried about having it be one particular thing all the way through. Like I said, I like the garter, and it's not really curling the project. Here, like I said, I had slipped more than one, so I kind of create a cool effect on that side if I liked it, or just creating that bump like I showed before. Then back in the garter for a while, and then doing some slip up here, a little more normal, and it looks like this on the back, just to show. So that's what's cool, is you can really just practice doing different stitches, get a different look, and kind of create a different visual interest in the project itself. So don't feel like you have to do, if you're following a pattern and does all the same, change it up. Don't feel like you have to just keep it all one way. So I started getting bored, so I played around with it to just kind of create some different effects throughout it. I'm not sure how long it is. I've been still practicing by going like this to see how long do I want it to be. It's not laying exactly right because I'm sitting down, but just to figure out how long I want it to be coming down this way for putting the button and stuff on. So I'm just going to work a little bit longer. I just wanted to explain again how to do the slip stitch. Basically all you're going to do is, if you decide that you want to slip a peg, all you're going to do is take off the loop. Oops, I did it the wrong hand here. Okay, so you're going to take off the loop. It's not as difficult as I'm making it seem. Alright, and then you're going to take your yarn and put it behind that peg before you put that back on. So that's what you kind of do. So then I would turn around and I'd be like, okay, now I'm going to knit. Well, this way actually I'm doing the purl row. So I'm going to purl the normal way. Put that up and over. And then I'm like, okay, now I want to slip again. So what I'm going to do is, all you're going to do is you're going to pick up that stitch. I'll make sure it's the right way here. Okay, you're going to pick up that stitch that's on it. Hold it away while you take this and you put it behind the peg. And then put the stitch back on. So that's what you kind of do, is you just kind of, whatever way you're deciding to do it, what you got. I hate when my yarn gets all tangled here. Okay, so that's all I did, was I just would go between purling and then slipping. And if you're holding it the way I'm doing it and you're looking at your own project, it will go a lot faster. There's the purl, and then when you want to slip, you're going to just take it off enough to put the 2 strands or 1 strand of yarn behind the peg, and then put your stitch back on. It does work up pretty fast. I know this video is going to be extremely long, but it's just to explain things, because I know people are like, well, what's a slip stitch? I had to look it up a little bit. I have one loom knitting book that when I first wanted to get into loom knitting, kind of talked about some of the stitches. So that's how I kind of learned them. So I had to go look about the slip stitch again. So, oops. That's all you're doing, is you're picking up that loop, and then you're just making sure your strands of yarn are behind the peg, and put it back on. So you're not, basically, it's just, you're skipping a peg, but bringing the yarn behind it so that you can use it for the next peg. And I hope that explains it well enough. And then this one goes back there. And then we purl it. And then what I'm going to do is on the opposite way back, is I'm going to do the opposite pegs. So that way it creates the slip stitch effect that I would want. Okay, so now I was like, okay, I went back and forth and I did my purling. Now I want to go back and I want to do my knit. Which means I actually slipped this one. So this one is going to get knitted. Excuse me. It's going to get knitted. Put back on the peg. And now this one is just going to get slipped. Which means that goes behind the peg, and that goes right back on the peg. So that's all I'm doing on the way back through, is doing the opposite of what I did the first way. So go ahead and do that for a little bit, and hopefully when I come back, I'll be ready to take this off. Okay, I decided to end the project. I feel like it's the length enough that I don't want it hanging down too far. So we're going to take it off the project, or off the loom, and then we're going to worry about the buttonhole and the button afterwards. We're going to use our crochet hook. This is the method that I like to use. And I'm actually starting this is where we originally started the project, starting with the peg here. But I'm going to be working my way backwards. So I'm at the last stitch I did, and now I'm going to work my way back to the beginning. Excuse me. So let's hopefully this will come out the way I want. Alright, so all I'm going to do, you're going to put your loop on there, and I'm going to do my chains in between. One. I think I'll do two. It might not look exactly the way you want, but it'll give it a little more of a visual interest at the end of it. And then the back over the front. Do one, two. Pick up the next loop. And then take the back over the front. Okay, you're going to do another two more chains. Put it around your thing. Pull it through. One. Wrap it. Pull it through. Two. Pick up the next loop. Back over the front. Two loops. One. Two. Back over the front. One. Two. Put the next loops on. Back over the front. One. Two. You can't see. Okay. And that's all I'm going to do all the way back to the beginning. I'm just doing the one, the two, and grabbing the next set of loops and putting them on there. The back over the front. One, two, put it on there. Back over the front. One, two, put the next one on there. You're basically just working your way back to the beginning, obviously. When it comes to the buttonhole, we're going to actually do an I-cord stitch, which is a pretty simple stitch to do. And you just got to be careful you don't want to make it too big, because you don't want the button. Keep in mind that yarn sometimes will have a little stretch to it, so you may want to make the buttonhole a little tight, so that way as you keep buttoning it and unbuttoning it, it won't give too much. That's why I kind of picked a big button. Two. Okay, we're almost to the beginning. Okay, last two here. One, two, and the last loops on there. The front and the back. And get rid of this. Again, I make it look more complicated than it is, just because of the way I do it. Okay. Now we're going to cut our scissors and we're going to cut some of the strands that we don't need at all. I'm not left-handed, so we'll see how well I can cut. Okay. And then we're going to bring that through this project. And with our last loop, and bring that all the way through. Help tie it off. And that's our end. Now, our end might look a little big, like you might be able to get away with doing one chain. But if you compare it to this side, it is a little bigger, so you may be able to get away with one chain. Like I said, I don't mind there being a visual difference in it for me. But if you want not to be, then you might only need one chain in between, because it's a little more stretchy. But here it is, off the loom. Now I'm going to make another quick little knot in it. Okay. And then we are all done, and now we can cut the strand, and the next part will be making the buttonhole. But you also have two choices with this buttonhole that you can do. if your project is loose enough, okay, because I'm going to have buttons here. Okay. If your project is loose enough, then you may be able to work the buttons through there. So I gotta get this out. Okay. I haven't taken them off this thing yet. Now there's a thing I gotta take off. Oh goodness. I don't know if I'm gonna use both these buttons for this or not. Okay, let's see if I can cut this out. My goodness. Things just wanna fight me today. There we go. Just need to be able to open it to take it off. Seriously, this should not be taking this long. So there we go. Finally, that's off enough. Okay, we're finally at the last part of the video. So you're gonna have your button, which I have to get out of my thing. I'm only gonna probably use one button, but you can do the same idea too. So this is the button that I have, and again, the reason I chose it was because of the hole being big enough. I felt to put a piece of yarn through. So that's one of the reasons I chose it. Have scissors, your loom. Now there's two ways you can do the button hole, because we're going to place this on the project. Basically, you're going to have to figure out where you want to lay. And with sitting down, it kind of makes it awkward to show you. But you'd want to figure out where you'd want to lay on you to close. Again, if I'm standing up, I got a ponytail too, so it's kind of acting weird. But if you were standing up, you could kind of get an idea of where you want it. And it probably should be a little longer. If you actually look with me sitting down, it only goes to about here. So I probably should have went a little longer with it. But again, it's up to you. It's your size neck, your size body. So what you're going to do is you're going to figure out where you want the button to be. Say you want it to just close like this. You're going to place a button here, and then you're going to need to create a buttonhole to kind of attach some clothes. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to end up taking pieces of my yarn. I guess I'll use white because it's the closest one. Okay, and we're going to cut, I found my scissors, I'm going to cut pieces of string. Okay. And then once you figure out where you want it, is where, you're going to just thread it through. If the hole is big enough to thread through without using a needle threader, which this one should be, don't mind me. Just got to put older yarns, it's fraying a little more, so it's not going to cooperate as well as a newer yarn would. And then you just put it through the hole. Okay, so that's pretty much right. Now what we have to do is we're going to use a crochet hook, and we're going to put it through wherever we want it to be in the project to close it off. So first I'm looking to see which side I want it to be like the front of the project, which is where this is going to be. Now, like I said, when I did this, I have a kind of a design there. I'll show it that way. You can just vaguely see it right here. So I have to figure out, do I want that to show or not show in my design? I think it's kind of cute, so this is going to be the top part because I want this design to show. So I'm just going to, like I said, once put it on, I'm like, okay, I'm going to stick this here, and then all you're going to do is you're holding that with that, is you're going to reach through the back with your crochet hook so that you can grab the yarn on one side of the project, or the button, okay, and then you're going to reach through the opposite side, and you're going to grab the other side of the button, and then just pull it and tie it closed, and that should create your button being on there just fine for when we do the buttonhole. And it's kind of a quick way to do it. That's why I would advise, if you like bigger buttons, shoot for them. If not, if you're great with a needle and thread, then use a smaller button. Okay, so I just tied it about 3 times, and I'm going to nip it a little. And try not to lose everything that's around me right now. Okay. Back over here, throw that in there. Okay, so now it's on there, and you can see a little bit. So if you wanted to, you could kind of go through and hide the yarn in your project, or trim it lesser. It really depends on your preference. So I'm just going to hide it a little bit by going through a spot in my project and reaching for the straggler and kind of pulling it through. So it kind of hides it behind a stitch work. So there's my button. I mean, you might want to tie it a little tighter. So then we're going to look at it and we're like, okay, where do we want the buttonhole to match up with it? So I've got this about that far down on the project. So if I were to wrap this, again, your best bet is to stand up and see how it lays, because like I said, I've got a ponytail in, and I'm having really bad hair today, as you can tell, and it probably needs to be a little longer, but my buttonhole's here. So I'm going to be thinking about putting a buttonhole right up kitty corner from it. So I'm going to look down and be like, okay, I need it to be about right here. It doesn't matter if they line up down here. Like, this looks pretty even. You could decide that you want it to be uneven, so that it's like this. which is I think how one lady did it. She did it so that it would be as if you took it at the bottom of the other part and kind of made it not even. So really it's up to you. Figure out where you want the button and then decide where you want it. And you can also, with a technique, put more than, well, this is the side that has the button. So on this side, you could put more than one buttonhole so that you could have the option of buttoning it down here to make it uneven or to turn around and button it even. So I think for the sake of this, because I'm planning on probably using this outside, I'm going to try to have it be buttoned up closer to my neck. So I'm going to keep it parallel to where it is. So it's right here, so I'm going to look down and say, okay, I need to kind of fall about here. Okay, so this is where I want my buttonhole to fall. Now, how are you going to remember this? If you already have it on your neck, you could always cut yourself another piece of string, use your crochet hook and kind of just dangle something down there, or get a safety pin that you can put through to mark where it is. Don't have that right now, so I'm using my finger. Okay, so we want to do a buttonhole roughly in this spot. There's two choices, because you want to make sure you're working on the right side. This, you can do the I-cord, which I believe I talked about, and what you're going to do is place 3 stitches or 3 holes back on the loom. And I'm doing it on the wrong side, sorry. You want it on the inner side of the loom. So you're going to go to the edge and you're just going to grab 3. It always looks more difficult than it really is when you're trying to show something on camera. Okay, so you're going to grab another, put that through a loop. Okay, and one more, because an I-cord is 3, using 3 pegs. Okay, so we can do that. I'm sure it looks right, so it's a little off in one of them. Okay, there we go. It really doesn't, as long as you have, so I got 3 on there. And what we're going to do is we're going to add another piece of yarn, and we're just going to go until we have a little cord. And I think I'm going to use white for it. Again, white's right here. And you're just going to do it as if you were knitting on the loom normal. So go to your end. Give yourself, I always say give yourself more end at the, or room at the end, because in case you need to work anything, you've got enough of a strand to do it. And then you just put it on. Excuse me. And what you're going to do with the I-cord is you can kind of just, you're just going to wrap. Excuse me. You don't really have to wrap the pegs, you're just going to put it in front and then knit over. So there's no really wrapping necessarily involved. Okay? So once you got it, you hold it towards you. We already went that way. We're going to turn around. We're going to go right back across the front and behind, because you're wrapping it behind. I don't know if you can see, it's getting wrapped behind. And then knit it over. If you use 2 different colors in the scarf and you want the buttonhole to kind of match that and not stand out as much, then you may want to use 2 strands of the same yarn. Okay, push that down. Okay, oh, I'm getting all tangled now. Okay, now the reason it looks a little tough here is because I'm holding these 2 to hide my straggle a little bit. But I can trim that off later, so I'm going to leave that alone and just start working with the, just wrapping that around to kind of hide that. And you're going to work down so you have pretty much what you think is going to be a good length to create the buttonhole. So we're going to go up and over. And what this does is it's a good way to create, it's kind of like when we think of doing an ear flap. When I did the video of an ear flap, it's kind of the idea that you have here. You're creating the buttonhole on that. And you can't quite see it yet because of, but all you're doing is, I'm behind the project now, but I'm just wrapping it to the front. And then I'm knitting it over. It's going to get a little easier because now I'm down to 1 strand because I don't need to hide that 1 strand anymore. I just missed it. Get back up there. I think I'm going to lose a stitch mid-product. It always makes me mad. Okay. So what this is doing on the inside, I'm going to show you, is it's starting to create what we're going to use to later go right around to the other side, which would be kind of cool. Or what we're creating to make the buttonhole, which is going to look kind of big. I just totally lost my ball of yarn. Okay. So we're pushing that down and we're doing the last little bit around, wrapping it. Like I said, you're not individually wrapping. You could decide to individually wrap them if you wanted, but since I want to do like the I-cord stitch, I'm not. I'm just doing it this way because I think it's a little simpler to do. And it does work up pretty fast when you're not trying to show people what you're doing. Okay. Now keep in mind you're doing a buttonhole, so you don't necessarily need it too long. Give me a little tug so you can see how it's coming down the bottom now. And then what you're going to do is you're going to loop that. So you got to be careful you don't want it too big where it's not going to really keep your button in place. So I'm going to do a few more here. You want it snug but not too snug, so it's really eyeballing it for length because I'm not keeping track of anything. And then you'll kind of know. See, it's loosening up. Okay, so this is what it's looking like when it's coming down. And then we're going to take it off and we're going to turn it, and you'll see in a minute. Well, not turn it, we're just going to remove this as the eye cord and tie the other side into the project, and that will be our buttonhole. So I'm just going to do a couple more here because I want to make sure I'll have the effect that I want. And this probably could be used on a handbag too. You could add a buttonhole on a handbag the same similar way. Okay, so I think that's going to be plenty good enough. So now we want to take this off. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take one strand off of one side, move it to the middle, knit over. Take the other strand, move it to the middle, knit over. Okay. Now we need to cut this, which I have my scissors again. Give yourself enough of a tail to play around with, to work with, so 5 or 6 inches. Now we're going to take this off the loom, which you can use your crochet hook to hold it, and we're going to go through and grab our tail and pull it tight. If you need that, we don't need that anymore. Okay, so that, as you can see, is going to create our button. Now I'm looking to make sure I'm still doing it on the same side. So now what you can do, okay, and it's kind of a big button, that's why I'm saying, is you want to hide this in the project. So you have to realize you want to work from the back. You're just going to reach in through the front. Get this right here. Seriously? Got caught. Okay, and you're just going to pull the strand through. Then you're going to work it back again. That crochet hook is really not working really. Okay, and we'll pull it through. Now obviously, I did that too big, so we're going to pull it right out. I realize that that's going to be too big of a hole. You want to move it over closer, and the way you can tell too is you can take your button and kind of loop it on your button so you can see how far over you may need to go to kind of work. So yeah, we get a little closer together. So we're almost going to take it, and we're looking at, this is the back of the project, and we're going to just almost create like a loop like that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do this a little different. We're going to come over to one of the first stitches from the eye cord that we did and pull our extra strand through that. Okay. Now let's lift up a little bit. So what you may want to do is just going to work it through a couple times to kind of secure it in place a little bit. Okay. And again, it helps if you're using a yarn that matches the project, or is one of the colors used in it, so that way if you have a big mess, you won't notice it as much. Okay, so this is coming to my buttonhole, but what I want to do is I want to make this part a little more flatter against the project. So what I'm going to do is bring the yarn on this side, but now I'm going to come up here because I have that gap, which may not happen for you, and I'm going to bring that strand through. So it kind of helps to bring the project closer down to the edge of the side. Okay, so we're going to work on that a little bit because I didn't realize it wasn't towards the edge. Okay, and then we're just going to pick another little stitch up here and pull it through. Okay, and that's kind of helping to keep it a little closer to the a little tug to the project. Okay, now we need to tie this off. So we're going to pick another stitch, just any random one, pull it through like that, and then pull this loop through, and then pull it. Pick another little stitch on the opposite side, wrap your yarn around it, pull it through, just kind of get it secure in there. And one last one. Okay. So it creates a loop. And basically what you can do is kind of keep it two loops like this if you want, and then tie it like you would, just tie it like you're tying a knot in a shoe. And do that a couple times. And then what you can do is you can just Then cut the extra strands off. And because this is going to be on the back side, no one's going to see it. Now if we put this on, and we button it, it'll keep my neck warm. As it almost matches, I've got to fix this one strand down here. It looks a little weird because I'm sitting down, but it actually works pretty good. It's really up against my neck, which if I'm standing and it does that, I'll be happy because it's cold where I live. So you can kind of do that, and you can place it, like I said, anywhere you want. And that buttonhole kind of works with a big button. If you use a smaller button, then you may want to try a different stitch than the I-cord. But no, I mean, it's not too bad. If I was standing up, like I said, it'd be a lot better. So yeah, this is what it looks like. I just got a little strand here that I gotta take care of here. That. Okay, so this is a little neck warmer scarf modified thingy mabob with different stitches throughout to create a little interest, which you can't quite see on here, and to keep my neck warm.